Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. We're so glad you're with us today. I'm Ray Samich, and I would like to introduce everybody, as always, to my dear co-host, colleague, and spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Wonderful as well, and delighted to be back with you, continuing a conversation that we started in our last show. And I thought about if I should try to summarize it in this show, and I really don't think I can do it justice. The program last week was, Is Fate Real? Is Destiny Real? And it took us about the full hour to really decide, and we determined that it is. So I would just like to invite everybody, if you missed that show, please feel free to go out to our Stress-Free Living channel on YouTube, and you can watch that in its entirety and see how that show developed for us to determine that we really feel it is real. So the question really, after we said it's real, is what do you do with that? How do you then, if you understand that that's a part of our life and that there is a certain amount of predetermined destiny and fate, what do you do with that knowledge? And that's what this show is going to be about, is can we change it? Are we simply supposed to be like sheep and accept it and move through it? And is that a good decision to make? Excuse me. Or should we decide to try to change our destiny? And what do we do with it once we know that it's there? So, Ratanjit, we've had kind of a week here to think about this. Do you have that answer? Do you know what we should do with our destiny?
See, before we go further, I hate to disagree with you. So you decided in the last minute, made a conclusion from our show that the fate is real. I never said that. So fate is a consequence of, if all the forces of earth, all the laws of the earth direct you, if you let them direct you, then they will direct you in certain conditions. So as a human being, we have several forces given to us. So in certain ways, some of those forces can control our destiny to a certain extent. So if you eat right, you are going to have a good health. And if you study, you are good student, you are going to have a good job, so on and so forth. But then there are exceptions. Somebody who is eating right, somebody who is very good student can find a job. So all these exceptions, and we begin to call those fate, right? So unless we understand the total picture, there are so many forces we don't even understand, we don't even know that what we experience in life are basically the consequence of all those forces. So more and more we learn, more we explore, more research we do, we are constantly getting to understand more and more of these forces. So ultimately, what we said, one thing, that even if you study all the things, you got equivalent of PhD in every subject, thousands of PhD you accumulated, although it is very, very difficult. Even then, you will always remain ignorant in certain subjects. So it is impossible to understand all these forces. So as a consequence, we will keep on calling those forces which are acting upon us, which you do not understand, as fate. So that is what we call as fate. But in our, you had something to say. Go ahead.
Well, no, I have a lot to say. First of all, always, I first want to apologize if I misunderstood how we concluded that last show, because I really did think that you were on board with that. But I'm also still confused. I mean, if you say that there are forces around us, if you say that there are natural forces, universal forces at work around us all the time, then to me, that is fate. I mean, I do kind of agree that we use it as a scapegoat. We blame bad things that happen. Well, I tried my best and it didn't work out, so that must be fate. Okay. Or a fluke, somebody who's very, very healthy, who eats right, lives right, they jog 10 miles a week and every day and all those things, and they fall over of a heart attack, and you say, well, that was his fate. So I do agree that we kind of look at that as a justification or an excuse or whatever. But I also think that many of us, including myself, say it was destiny to meet my wife 50 years ago and have it was a very peculiar circumstance how we met and how we've had a wonderful life for the last 45 years. I give that credit to fate, to destiny too, that the two of us in this great big world were put together. So I don't think it's just a justification or an excuse or to make us feel better about something. I think sometimes it deserves to have credit, to get the credit for something too. So how does that fit into your thought process? I mean, aren't those things, if there are natural sources at work, if the universe is full of energy and power, and isn't that destiny?
See, what happens is, if before I have to make a comment on your spouse before you go further. So if we had married another person and fallen in love, and it's possible that you would be saying the same thing. So it was fate because I met somebody else and I have a good life. So suddenly we call it fate, but it is ultimately circumstances brought you together and you begin to like each other, and so many good words were said between the two of you, which inspired, instigated what you call as love. And initially, our physical attraction and all those we confuse as that love. We spend all our life before we comprehend the true meaning of love. So this love, otherwise, people who are married for 30 years suddenly divorce each other, that I don't love her anymore. So they begin with never had a love in their life. So anyways, for example, you and I met 30 years ago for a different reason. So we call that as a fate. I would have met somebody else. I would have probably done some other things and may have not done the radio show in our life. So that I would call it a fate. So what happens is certain things which happen in our life because of certain situation, we end up calling that as fate. So there are different situations.
Isn't it? Isn't it? You said
No,
we call it that, but I mean, isn't that what fate means? Isn't that the
no,
whole idea that?
we call it a fate because those are basically circumstances would have been different, and we would have been in a different place. So again, if you are born again, the same life starts, you will not have the same kind of life.
Right. Correct. Well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, maybe we don't really know the answer to that, but I mean, it would
Well,
seem that you're right.
obviously, time has changed, the cell phone has changed, and the whole thing has changed.
Right.
Your grandchildren are not going to experience the kind of things you experience. So
That's
things will
exactly true.
change.
That's exactly true. No, so you're right. So the circumstances would be different, the people would be different, technology and everything. So I would concede on that. But I guess my disagreement, not disagreement, but confusion with you is where you should give credit to fate or destiny, or are you saying you should never give credit to that? I mean, and we can do, I think I wrote down, I think you've inspired another show on what love means and relationships and all of that. And if fate is a part of that, because I think that would be its own interesting show for the people that do create something out of nothing and other people that have something and then walk away from it, or some people that can never find it or whatever it is fate a part of all of that? So that'll be another future show. But for this one, I don't want to go down that path too easily, because that would be an easy sidebar to start talking on. I want to stay focused. You're giving destiny some credit there. You're saying that there are times in our life when we allow the universal forces to take charge and they make things happen a certain way, and we allow them to. So, as I think I heard you say, so those are destiny. But there's other times that we it's just coincidence. It's just that we've made something out of nothing. We've taken a set of circumstances. Let's use a case study here. Let's use the case study of you and me, Ratanjit. Okay, maybe nobody will find this of interest, but I hope they do, because I think it's a perfect case study. You and I met by complete accident. Even more than that, you were filling in for a person, I was filling in for a person. So that's even more than an accident. An accident is two guys bumping in the street together, hitting, maybe our cars collided and we got out and we met each other. But this was so unusual that we were both substitutes for other people. And then we learned in 5 minutes that the whole reason those other two people were supposed to meet, that we were substituting for, didn't have any validity. We found out quickly that the whole premise of the meeting wasn't accurate. And to be specific, you wanted to start an Indian show. Your people that you were representing wanted to start an Indian show, and our radio station was unable to deliver a signal in the area that you had to reach. And so it was before the days of internet, physically impossible for that to be of any value to them. So there you have those three circumstances. I'm substituting, you're substituting, and the reason they were supposed to meet wasn't valid. To me, that's fate. To me, I look at that and I say, I never would have met you in a million years in this world if it hadn't been for that destiny meeting. And you have changed my life through this. All of these programs we've done, all of the relationship that we've had, all of the people that I've met and you've met as part of our relationship, the love that we have found, is it wrong to give some of that credit to the universe to put us together?
Yeah, that is easy way out, Ray. We have to give somebody a credit. So the chapter is closed when we have given his credit. So no more thinking is necessary. But if you want to explore that, why that happened, there are so many forces working together which brought us together. Similarly, if those forces were different, we would be in a different places. So what we call fate is basically consequence of different forces acting. There are thousands of forces which are acting together, which making things happen. And these are all controlled by the very rigid law of the universe. By discovering these laws, we have been able to develop science and technology. And because they are so reliable, they, under certain circumstances, they act exactly the same. Once you change the circumstance, they change. Example is when you take water, put under freezing condition, it becomes solid ice. If you contaminate the water with salt, you put in the same temperature, it won't become ice. So we have shifted the freezing point of water by putting salt in it. That's what we do when we salt the roads. So once we discovered that we can change the melting point of water, because frozen water we cannot drive on, so we started using salt, which is converting the solid ice into water, which you can drive on. So similarly, these things, once we learn, we begin to use them. So otherwise, freezing rain is a fate, and your car runs into that and it's an accident, it's a fate. Now, if we use salt, we control that fate.
To me, you're talking apples and oranges here, Ratanjit.
Yes.
There's no, yes, everything you said is true. No question. It's all science. And I'm not disputing that whatsoever. But I don't understand the relevance of science to what appears to be coincidence of people meeting. I don't understand. I mean, because there were, are you saying because it was in the winter? Are you saying because they put salt on the roads, I was able to drive that day and reach you in Solon? I mean, is that what you're saying? I mean, yes, if it was snowy and cold, maybe I wouldn't have been able to drive there. Okay.
Yes.
But that seems like a minor point.
The person
compared to the
who were supposed to meet in that meeting, your
Right.
secretary fell sick.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, they would have met.
Right.
Otherwise, we would have never met. So we call this as a consequence. We call this as a fate, which we are not able to explain that because we have not planned it. Anything which happened to us unplanned, we call it fate. But ultimately, this is your radio station basically was propelled by adding more client to that. The force which drove you into that meeting was basically finding more client. If that force did not exist, we will not have the meeting. Right?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So
I'll buy that.
If you take that force, which you can call it as a force because you are trying to generate revenue for the radio station, and you didn't want to miss an opportunity. In spite of your secretary being sick, you wanted to substitute that. As a consequence of that law, something else happened. You met a crazy guy like me, and suddenly we started a radio station, which half of the time we don't make any sense.
That's true. Maybe now too. But at least we have our Zoom people that we know we haven't lost them yet. So we have a few people that are here that are listening. So, but let's okay, so you're right. Okay, you were driven, the person that was supposed to attend that was driven by a cause of trying to serve your Indian community.
Yes.
My secretary was driven by the cause of trying to find a new client and being able to add your culture to our nationality program lineup. So there was a business or a pure motivation, okay, scientific, if you will, in terms of motivation on both sides. But here's where it gets to be destiny, okay? My secretary at the last minute fell sick. She was in the office and she fell sick and says, I just don't think I can drive there, and I sure can't eat lunch, and I just don't think I can make it, okay? Your person had to be called out of town after the appointment was set up. So there was that change, okay? So you have two substitutes, okay? Isn't that coincidence? I mean, how do you call that science? I mean, is it because, my young lady ate something that she shouldn't have eaten that morning and it made her stomach, feel bad, and she didn't take care of herself? She ate the wrong food. I mean, where do you stop saying that you can explain these things and you start accepting the fact that there must be something to it? There must be destiny involved.
All our consequences, random things happen because so many forces are acting. Some of those forces we do not understand. Forces like her human body was affected by the food. So that was a force which instigated another substitute, and so on and so forth. So there's, just because we can explain that, why you were there, why I was there, it was not a consequence. It was not a fate. You can explain that, why both of us were there. And obviously, supposing we had a radio program on the air, supposing your radio station was reaching the right party, or if these original people met and they decided that this was not a deal because it was not reaching the right radio station, there is still possibility and you and I would meet somehow.
There was destiny, we would have. Right?
Again, you would call it as a destiny. So
Well,
there is always a reason for us to be there. Now, there is I think you need to take a break. It's 20
yes, I
seconds.
really do. Yeah, you got me so fired up here. I've lost track of time. I thought we were going to talk about what do we do with our destiny? How can we change our destiny, and should we? But we've reverted back to understanding that I had it all wrong, which is typical. We haven't really determined if destiny is real, if fate is real. So we've kind of gone back to that first topic to try to get an understanding of that. And we don't yet. So we'll see if we can resolve that over the next few minutes and still eventually get back to our topic at hand. In any way, we are trying to reduce the stress in your life. And there's stress right now that I'm feeling in mine. So we hope that we can do this. This is Stress-Free Living. We'll be right back. All right. Kim, want to welcome you. Dr. Jagjit, you guys have 90 seconds. Anybody want to add a thought or a question?
Yeah, I might agree up to 80% with Ratanjit Singh and 20% with you. So still I'm not fully convinced with especially some of the things happening in everybody's life, how it happens. Maybe we are not able to understand, Or that might be the reason. I can't say because some things are there which are flexion or incidental, or I don't know what to say about it. But that is the reason we put it to fate and destiny.
Right, you're right where I am for sure, but I'll try
Yeah,
to follow those.
because I still believe in something like fate and destiny. Maybe Ratanjit Singh doesn't, but I am still not 100% with him.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? We've got a couple seconds left. All right, that's all right. We'll move forward with this. Maybe it is beyond our understanding. Maybe Dr. Jekjit is right. Maybe it's just something that we never can explain or understand. That's kind of a little bit how I'm feeling right now. I don't know if I'm going to ever get this. Ratanjit, you ready? I think I'm loaded for bear today.
Yeah.
So are you ready for me?
Yes.
Okay, we welcome all of you. Thank you for being with us here today. And we'll come back to you in about 15 minutes since I ran so late. Okay, we're back. This is Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Samas, with you today, talking about destiny, talking about is it real? Back to that original topic. And if it is real, what the heck do we do with it? Do we accept it? Do we move through it despite it? Do we try to use it to our benefit? But I'm first trying to understand if it's real or not. And as one of our wonderful Zoom guests asked, is it even beyond our understanding? Is it one of those mysteries of life that while we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we'll never quite understand? We can't really explain how amazing coincidences happen. Are they coincidences at all, or were they meant to be, or are they just things that just happen in life? I mean, you hear so many times where within seconds something would have changed dramatically. If it's happened to me, I really think I could document 20 occasions where if I would have gone where I was supposed to go at a certain time, something would have happened, but I missed it. And in some cases it was a good thing. Thank God I saved my life by not being there. Other times it was a bad thing. I missed my opportunity. I got to share one real quick thing. My brother and I were going to buy a lottery ticket. We never play the lottery. We were going to buy a lottery ticket. A number came up in a calculator that was so unusual. It was like 41414141. And he says, play the number. And I says, okay, I will. And I didn't. And that number came up on the lottery that night. We heard it on the news. It was there. And so there we missed a crazy opportunity that, we didn't take, and it was presented to us. And, is that destiny that number came through to us? Was it destiny that I didn't play it when I could have become a millionaire instantly? I'm still really baffled by this one. Okay, you got to help me understand. Is it beyond our understanding why things work out the way they do? Do we just accept it and live our life?
So imagine if you have the power to foresee everything, to understand everything. So then you anticipate, what is going to happen, where things are. Right now, we are operating with a very, 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 very limited tools of five senses, which can't even see the proper frequency of all the frequency of light. You can very limited hearing. You can see all the sound which are around us. You can only feel and touch few things. So we have very limited five senses. So supposing you exceeded and you now are able to see everything. you are able to anticipate, you are able to understand everything. And then you will be able to control your destiny. Right now, we are at the mercy of natural laws, which we do not even understand they are operating. So as a consequence, we call what we do not understand when it happens as a destiny, as a consequence. So in that respect, it is fate. It is destiny. In absence of totally understanding everything, we are going to be basically controlled by the universal laws which we don't understand. They are operating right around us, right within us. So when we do not understand why this is happening to us, we call it destiny. Now, when you, all our religions, scriptures, they tell us there is something like God who knows everything. So that is why we pray to God to change our destiny. So ultimately, we are looking for that power which knows everything. We call it God, in wrong places. We think God resides in temple, church, or synagogue, or mosque. That is where we get the education, understanding where the true God lies, the true power lies. The true power lies within us. Now, there is an irony when you are able to connect to that power within us. That power cannot coexist with your ego. That power cannot coexist with your me being I. Once that power is available to you, you only are in that power mode. You cannot be in your self mode. So now that power has all the answer. The power can change anything it wants to change. But once you are operating in that power mode, suddenly everything appears to you as perfect. You do not want to change anything. So this is the irony of the whole equation. Once you become that power, your desire, which is all ego incentive desire to become rich, to be have long life, to have this and that, all that is instituted by your ego mode. Once that ego disappears, because it cannot coexist with the power which is of the universe, which is within you, which is making you alive, and when you become that true power, when you start to live in the true power mode, the total understanding becomes clear, and you have the power to change anything you want to change. But suddenly, you have no desire to change. You accept everything as it comes. You have no ego mode. You have no incentive to change. This is very complicated, but this is the ultimate answer. Right?
It is very complicated. The first thought I have to have is that I think there's a distinction, and somewhere over the years we've had a little bit of some of this content, and I want to make the distinction that says that I know you're not saying we become God, okay, because human beings cannot become God, but you're saying we're tapping into the power of the divine, and we are utilizing that amazing power within us in our lives. That's kind of our goal, right? Is to be able to tap into that power, but not to become God. And I wanted to kind of make that distinction that I think we've made in the past, because we don't have the ability to become a God, but we do have the ability to tap into that power of God. Is that a distinction that is fair to make, or should we pursue that?
So, the moment you remain and you say, I am not God, you are still have ego in you. So once you become nothing but divine power, only see and become part of the divine power. You cannot be the whole divine power. You become part
Okay,
of
that's a
part
fair distinction, and that's I think where we ended up with the last time, and I wasn't getting there properly. So that's fair. We become part of that. We don't ever become, ever all of that, because I don't think that that's possible, and we could really have that discussion if we needed to. But to tap into that and become part of that is a perfect. I'm perfectly accepting of that with my background and my faith and everything else. So let's go into the second part of that. If that is true that you laid out, and we, under those circumstances, would have the power to change destiny, control destiny, but we would choose not to, because we would see the wisdom of it, and we would see the cause of it and the purpose of it. So we no longer would want to change it. And that was the ironic part that you mentioned. Even if we were in control of it, we wouldn't want to, and we wouldn't feel the need to. Okay. So why don't we shortcut that whole process? Okay. And simply say, okay, if that were the case, if that ultimate situation happened, why don't we just accept it that way now? I mean, why don't we just accept that the plan that is out there for us is the best plan? Even if we could change it, we wouldn't. So let's not worry about it. Let's not try to change it. Let's just accept it and move on. Isn't that a way to take a very complicated situation and simplify it so that we could just be happy and content with that?
So what happens is that if you accept every situation which is handed to you, you accept, say, I cannot move, so you can very easily become lazy to accept everything. So ultimately, your mind, your whole demeanor, your whole thing, because you have to realize they are gifted to you. You are able to think through. You are able to move your hand. You are able to move your leg. You are able to go places. So the nature has given us this gift to either feed itself, or what is it in it for me, or to add value. So if we focus on adding the value from whatever we have, what are circumstances which are given to us? You talked about getting married and having love. If you find a person who you want to spend your life, and right now the criteria is they have to be more beautiful, they have to be financially well, they have to be more intelligent, this and this and this, the worldly things. There is another way of choosing a partner. If we have the same objective to add the highest value, then whatever we have based on that, if we focus on adding the highest value, that relationship would be very rewarding. So our criteria to select a partner should be whether we have the same objective of adding the highest value under every circumstance. So circumstances would change, which we end up calling as fate. They are given to us under different conditions, different circumstances. But our objective never changes. We are constantly focused on finding opportunity under the given condition to add the highest value. So this is the way you live your life rather than in the ego mode, which you are constantly going to want to change everything so that you are seeing the benefit in it. The other side of your soul, your inner energy, your God in you basically has desire to serve, to add the highest value. If you coincide that your mind's capability, your skills capability, your education's capability to realign yourself to adding the highest value, first of all, you will realign yourself to the powers, wisdom present within you, and you begin to be you utilize all the circumstances, all the fates, all the destinies only towards using them to add value, right?
Well, up until that very last line, you were talking about taking control. I think you were talking about taking control of our life and being zoned in on the mission of adding the highest value everywhere, all the time. And then you came back at the very end, though, and you said, and using the natural powers, the natural forces of the universe in doing that. And so to me, that implies that there is a destiny. If those natural forces exist, that there is a destiny that's also part of that equation. And we're supposed to use those along with our mission of adding the highest value. You'll need to clarify that because it appears to be a little bit of a contradiction the way I'm hearing it. So when we come back from this last quick break, I'm going to follow up with that because can't act on it if I don't understand it. And maybe a few of our listeners are also equally confused, or maybe I'm the only one. We'll find out when we come back in just a moment on Stress-Free Living. Did anybody else hear that same thing? You've got 90 seconds here. Anybody hear that contradiction or any thoughts? Any other thoughts?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
How are you? How are you, sir? You're
I'm
feeling better?
I'm not well from last 2-3 days, but I'm okay today. So
Good.
otherwise, Saturday is very busy day for me. I come home late. So anyway, today is lucky day for me. And you know what I'm saying is, there are astrologers in India, South India. They predict your destiny quite accurately, 80 to 90%. Like they tell you what will happen at what age and what will be the name of your spouse, that kind of things. What is the name of your parents? All that they can predict by just taking your thumb impression. So don't you think there is a science behind the destiny that they are able to read from the thumb impression? I have been to such an astrologer.
Very good.
Okay,
Good
very
point.
good. I will definitely add into that. Very good thought. Thank you. Anybody else? You have a couple more seconds. Any other thoughts? I guess not. Guess we're on our own here, brother. Hey, we're coming back. I believe this is the last commercial here. Do you understand? You looked a little quizzical on my last comment before the break, Ratanjit. Did you understand what I was saying? What appeared to be we're totally in control. It's all on us. And then he says, but then use those forces. So it just when I was about to say, okay, there is no destiny, then you brought destiny back in. So that's what I'm gonna ask. We're back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi, yours truly, Ray Samich, with you, wrapping this segment up here today and trying to understand a little bit more about destiny and fate in our lives. Ratanjit, we had a great question we're going to come to in just a moment from one of our guests, but I want to continue the thought that we were on together. You had pretty much laid it out beautifully, as you always do, how nothing else matters if we are adding the highest value. That should be our supreme mission and goal in life, and that everything will fall in place no matter who we're with and how we act and what goes on if we use all of our capabilities, experiences, talents, gifts to be adding the highest value. I was 100% on board with all of that. But then you came back and says, and then we will use the forces and power of nature to be able to attain those things, which seemed to me to reintroduce the idea of destiny then, to reintroduce the idea of those forces of nature. So it came back after that dissertation to the same original concept. So is fate real? Is there destiny? Are you saying that there is then? That those forces of nature we have to use to our benefit? We have to control destiny somehow?
See, what I'm saying is, if you knew everything about all the forces in the universe, you can control your destiny. Obviously.
If we knew them all?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. Okay, if we knew them all, all right.
Which
is impossible.
Which is impossible. This is impossible. Okay. Then that is why there is always going to be a destiny. So in one sense, there is no destiny. They are all run by the universal forces. But other side is that it is impossible to know them all and control them all, and only power, universal power, which you call God, can control them all. So once we totally remove our ego, die while we are living, and only divine power controls us, runs us, we are in sync with divine power, we will know those forces. And at that point, we will not want to change anything, because we know that everything is designed for a reason. So there is a contradiction here. In one sense, everything is run by forces. The other side is we will never know and control all the forces. So we will continuously face the consequences of the forces which are upon us and within us and around us, and we will always call as destiny because we do not control them. So in that sense, there is destiny. But the reality of this thing is they are all consequences of forces of the universe. Now, that begs a question. So what is in our control? So we are given the brain power and the limbs to operate on. We can walk and we can touch and we can lift and we can do things and we can think. And there is enormous power which is given to us of thinking and inventing, the creativity, all that. What do we do with it? So in absence of the real mission, we end up feeding our ego. We end up collecting things. We end up being better than others. So ultimately, that leads to depression and that lead to stress. So the real purpose is to add value. By adding value, you become value-adding entity. As a consequence of adding value, this worldly wealth and worldly fame and worldly things is also available to you because you are now value-adding entity. So any challenge, any situation which is you are confronting, which you cannot understand, which you cannot control, you find opportunities to add value. And as a consequence, your life would be meaningful, stress-free, and complete, right?
Okay. I guess I don't have a follow-up, so I'm just going to go and revert to one of the questions that came through during our little break there. There's a lot of people out there who supposedly can predict our future. And we've all heard them and seen them. They're on all the magazines and tabloids and everything else. And most of them, you know, I think are there just for the money and for the show. But there seem to be people amongst us. We've all had opportunities of hearing and knowing about people amongst us who truly can predict what's going to happen, who have incredible uncanny abilities to see into our destiny, even to the point of naming names and giving dates and giving things that are just incredibly verifiable in terms of what's going to happen to us. Okay. How do we explain that? Is that a part of the natural forces and destiny that some people do have the ability to see and understand and we just don't? Or do we and we're not willing to look into it at that level and say we can see our destiny? What do you think about that?
You know, each of us are given special powers. Each one of us understands things differently. So normally, normal people, we call them normal, generally are assigned a certain power. Or there are certain special people who have different power, but they don't have the total powers. They have maybe few other power, maybe they can foresee certain things, which is understandable. That's what I'm saying. There are so many powers. So we are gifted with only limited powers. Some of are gifted with unique powers, which is still does not give them the total understanding or total power of the universe. So we remain basically handicapped within certain power, within certain knowledge, no matter how we try. So when we find somebody who can do certain thing more than I can do, I'm impressed. But that person still is limited.
All right.
Right.
You've answered that question. You've answered a lot of my questions today, Ratanjit. I'm sorry, I think I was unusually hard on you today in trying to understand this, because this is such a, wow, a complicated and very deeply involved topic. And as one of our guests earlier said, I wonder if it's just beyond our total understanding. It seems that even if it is, you've given us the path, you've given us the remedy that says it really doesn't matter if we understand it fully or not. If we do what we're supposed to do, which is intensify our mission to add the highest value, then everything else will fall in place. And then maybe at this point, it doesn't matter what's supposed to happen. We make the best things happen around us in our lives, and we accept those that we can't. hopefully I'm summarizing it better this time than I did last week. Ratanjit, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your love and your wisdom with all of us. It's been entertaining and interesting as always. And thanks to all of our guests for being with us here on our Zoom call and wherever you may be listening, however, on YouTube or radio streaming, whatever it is, we thank you for being part of our show today. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again soon.